Hello everyone, I've realised recently that I have been dunking mainly on my side of the pond when it comes to woke leftism. I think it's about time I gave Wales and Scotland a bit of a break, so I have decided to look over to the United States of America. The recruitment arm of the US Army has recently put out some new recruitment videos called The Calling. And as you can see on screen, it involves a rather diverse cast of characters, all who have been animated to tell their story of their quote-unquote calling to the US Army. And as you can probably tell from the title, some of these recruitment videos are particularly woke. So I thought, why not go through and react to these videos from the least woke to the most woke from what I can tell. Really build up to that inner wokeness, I say. And well, why keep you waiting anymore? Here's the first one, aka the least woke.
I used to watch helicopters over my backyard in Hawaii. My dad was an Army officer, so we lived on base. I loved hearing them start up and take off. Coolest thing in the world. But I knew I could never be a pilot.
So already with this one, we've got the story straight. We've got David, who lives on base with his Army officer dad, who works at an Army base with a lot of helicopters, and quite clearly he is into his helicopters, but doesn't think he has what it takes to become a helicopter pilot. All fine so far, and purely going on about his character. I want to make this very clear, because as I say, these get more and more woke, and this is the least worst of them.
I never considered myself to be a smart person. I struggled to keep up in class. Subjects like math and Spanish were so hard for me.
Okay, not too sure why Spanish is relevant to becoming a helicopter pilot, but maths I can understand. But even still, this is still all about his character. This is him struggling at school, and because of that, he doesn't think he's smart enough to be a helicopter pilot. As I say, all fine so far, nothing to complain about.
Growing up, my mother was in and out of the hospital for nearly a decade before she passed away. My older brother Rob helped raise me. He eventually followed my father's footsteps into the Army, and I wanted to as well. Just not as a helicopter pilot.
Again, this is all about his character, what he went through in life. And what's important is that this is relatable for absolutely everyone. Everyone has struggled at a subject in school. Everyone, by the time you're David's age, has probably met with some loss. Not as bad as your mother, but my God, you can empathise with it. And obviously the rest of the family have all joined the Army, and so this is about him following in their footsteps, but not feeling he can. This is clearly a video supposed to be going out to people who don't feel they have what it takes to join the Army, and that's absolutely fine. That is actually the type of people that the Army should probably be recruiting. She wants to try and recruit as many people as possible, so if you have David here who didn't feel he could do it, and obviously this story is going to say he eventually did join the Army, otherwise it would be a crap recruiting tool, it's doing the job it needs to. There's nothing injected in it so far that screams to me woke, and that is really good. I wish all of them were like this.
Then, during a long road trip with Rob, he told me to pursue my true dream. But I'm not pilot material, I said. Rob was done listening to my excuses, so finally, I decided to stop making them.
Again, great stuff. It's not injected with any woke bullshit. All it is a story of a guy who had dreams and didn't think he could quite reach them. These dreams happen to be in the Army. That's lucky for the Army recruitment ad. And so from there, as you'll see, he then puts his all into becoming a helicopter pilot.
I gave myself permission to dream and refocus my life around this goal. Training myself to pay attention, visualizing myself in the cockpit of an Army helicopter. I even created something called a vision board, listing my goals. I had little chance to achieve them all, but I gave my all and made them happen. It doesn't take a genius to become an Army pilot. It takes time and effort.
And that's pretty much it for that story. It goes on a bit more, obviously, but it's not really relevant. It's just more, oh, you can achieve your dream if you have the calling, whatever. It's fine. It's fine for a recruitment ad. As I say, probably the least woke of them all. Probably the best ad that they actually have for it, though, to be honest, the next one we're going to go into is also a pretty good ad for it. So let's get into it.
Back in Haiti, I used to walk miles down unpaved roads to school every day. So when my family had the opportunity to move to Florida, it opened my eyes to a new world. A world that I would one day want to defend.
So again, this one is Ricky, and it's a little less everyman like David's was. And pretty much the only reason I say this is slightly more woke than the last one is it's about an immigrant, or first generation immigrant I should say, and while that may be slightly more woke, I'm not saying it's an issue. I just put these in a certain order, and I decided this one was the second, and it should probably tell you something that an immigrant is the second least woke of all of these videos. But hey, let's get into his story.
Being a first-generation immigrant, I was amazed by what was normal in the U.S. Simple things like well-kept grass and smooth roads were a huge deal. Seeing my parents succeed in this world was humbling, showing me that hard work and determination goes far.
And this is actually the second thing. This is what makes it a hell of a lot less woke than most of the others. It's making America out to be this really great place for immigrants where they can actually grow and succeed. And it's much better than the shithole of Haiti, which, if you remember when Donald Trump said that places like that were shitholes, people like Conan O'Brien went over there, stayed in a resort for a week and said, oh no, it's the greatest country in the world. So just the fact that they've done that makes this a hell of a lot less woke than the rest of them, and again, is a pretty good advert for the US Army, because most people wanting to defend the country will agree with these ideals.
I didn't realize how far it would eventually get me. I initially joined junior ROTC to get out of gym class, but it was much different than I expected. It was actually more physically demanding and disciplined than gym, and I even had to wear a uniform. But something about it was more interesting. It was empowering to feel like a part of a team, and I started taking it more seriously than I ever expected.
And there you go, this is another reason it's a good advert. Ricky here wanted to get out of gym class and thought joining the junior RTC would be easier than gym class. Actually found it harder, but also found it a lot more fun, because he actually felt like he belonged part of something, and that part of something happened to be, well, the US Junior Cadets. So it's being inclusive in a good way. They've moved over from Haiti. While they're not full US citizens, he is there trying to join the US Army, partly because he likes the country so much, and partly because obviously he's trying to get out of gym class. But then, as he joined it, he found himself loving the country more from the sounds of it. Great thing to put out there to the first generation immigrants who are kids. This is the type of thing you want to show them, and instead of the woke stuff that says America's literally hell on earth. But there we go.
But it was one day during a 9/11 ceremony, I started seeing the Army in a new light. Over 3,000 students lined the walls and the balconies of my school. My whole community was there, including firefighters and service members from every military branch. The silent show of respect for this country was deafening. I was now determined to defend this nation that I called home, and to not only be a citizen, but a soldier as well.
And again, that's the end of that one. But again, not very woke. The only woke bit is that it happens to be about an immigrant, but I'm not going to take points away from it from that. I just had to order these things. These two recruitment videos, excellent work from the US Army. And to be honest, the next one isn't too bad either, though I think you can start seeing the wokeness seeping through a bit more. But overall, I'd say the next one's good, so let's quickly go through it.
When I was 4, my siblings and I watched my dad try to take his own life right in front of us. The police were called and they rescued him. I grew up wanting to help people like my father, people who are suffering.
So a pretty grim introduction for this one to begin on. Obviously, siblings watching their own father trying to take his own life is traumatizing. But it sets up the story, I suppose. She saw people helping her dad not take his own life, and from there she wants to be the type of person who helps people like that.
My parents were first-generation immigrants from the Dominican Republic. We shared a 3-bedroom apartment in New Jersey with 10 family members. With my dad's struggles, my mom had to work 16-hour days. So I helped any way I could.
So a second generation immigrant, which, you know, on a scale of wokeness by itself is probably a step down from Ricky's, but she also has an essentially single mother with essentially a deadbeat dad due to be fair, due to his suicidal thoughts and depression. Plus you're living in a 3-bedroom apartment in New Jersey, which is depressing enough, but you're also sharing it with 10 other families. So this seems to be laying it on thick that life is not easy for immigrants, though of course it depends what type of immigrant you are. But overall I wouldn't say there's a massive victim complex about it, like there is in the further stories, but let's carry on with this one.
My neighborhood was tough. My friends got into a lot of trouble. I wanted to fit in. One time, I snuck out and stayed 3 days at a friend's place. When I came home, Mom wanted to teach me to appreciate the life I had by sending me to the Dominican Republic to stay with relatives for a year.
I mean, this story took a bit of a turn, but with her living in a New Jersey 3-bedroom apartment with 10 other families, of course, she's going to get in a bit of gang trouble, I suppose. But I like how the thing that made her mum snap and send her to the Dominican Republic for a year was the fact that she ran away for 3 days. I reckon something worse actually made her do that, but I think they're trying to keep this fairly generic.
I had no idea what to expect. My relatives lived in a house with a tin roof. Tourists used to drive by and throw candy at us. Once, on a school field trip, I missed the bus back, completely stranded, and a stranger went out of her way to help me get home. I remember thinking, no matter what, there are always good people in the world.
I mean, probably best not to assume every person you meet's a good person, but I understand what you mean. But I just find this whole story weird. Kind of, all the details she's putting in are really weird. Like, oh, my relatives had a tin roof. It's like, okay, most houses in Australia have that to reflect the sunlight. If you want to say it's a shanty town, you need to be a bit more specific than that. And then the next line, oh, tourists drove past and threw out candy. Just really weird details that don't add anything to the story. But obviously her whole point here is that if you want to be helpful, join the US Army. Which might be a bit confusing if you end up on frontline infantry. You're not exactly helping people by shooting them, but... well, there we go. Join the army for whatever reason you want.
And when I returned to the US, I knew I had to be one of those good, helpful people. I just didn't know how. One day at school, I came upon an Army recruiter and told him about my goals. He took me through all their different careers, and that's when it hit me. The Army is an army of good people. I knew what to do. Now I serve in a combat support hospital, doing what fulfills me the most.
So there you go. The through line on that one I wouldn't say is particularly good. I mean, essentially what she's trying to say is she likes to be helpful, so became a nurse or maybe some sort of doctor in a combat hospital. Which is fine and all that, but I guess when it came to the whole part of the Dominican Republic year, it was just a load of useless details and things like that. So in the end, I'd say that one was a bit woker, but overall not the worst advert we're going to see. It's kind of on the meh level, I suppose. Anyway, time for the bad ones.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems. It begins in California, with a little girl raised by 2 moms.
Yeah, this is where it all starts to go downhill pretty rapidly. Because 2 of the last ones started by basically saying, yes, I am an immigrant or daughter of an immigrant who actually quite likes the US, especially the Haitian one. The Haitian one especially said that. And then, of course, you had David, who was son of a US officer on a helicopter base. Stuff that I'd say for their story is pretty relevant. This one literally starts off with a cream pie in the face saying, hey look, she has 2 mums. She's the daughter of a lesbian couple. So let's hope it improves, eh?
Although I had a fairly typical childhood, took ballet, played violin, I also marched for equality.
Make it stop. Literally, if she was born 10 years later, because I assume she's about 20 odd in this video, she would not be in any way joining the army. She'd be shouting for defund the police, which in turn probably means demilitarise the US. So when it comes to Emma, we have lesbian mothers and someone who marches for equality.
I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age.
You might like to think that, but marching in the street with fairly mundane banners saying "love everyone" is absolutely not helping people. It just makes you feel good, unfortunately. Anyway, we actually now get a bit of relevant story.
When I was 6 years old, one of my moms had an accident that left her paralyzed. Doctors said she might never walk again. But she tapped into my family's pride to get back on her feet, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom.
I mean, I assume they weren't married because gay marriage wasn't legal in the US at the time, so that's fair enough, but you could have just had this bit, and I would have complained a lot less about it being woke, because if you start off saying, this is the story about the daughter of lesbian moms, it just makes me go, oh god, why are they spewing this crap out? When really, you could have just had that little bit where it's like, oh, one of my guardians, or, you know, you can say mums there, I suppose. One of my mums had an accident, thought she'd never walk again, then she ended up walking to the altar to marry her wife. Or bride or whatever. That just works so much better than the way you did it. This just seems to be the type of advert to try and get the people who are never going to join the army because they think it's racist to join the army. Anyway, as I say, let's hope it improves.
With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and then attended UC Davis, where I joined a sorority full of other strong women.
Oh my god, make it stop. The only woman I believe is actually strong in this so far is the woman who got paralysed and then managed to get herself walking again. That is the only one, because quite clearly she has overcome an obstacle, and a rather large one. Whereas with the rest of them, I'm constantly having to be told that they're strong, which is terrible. This advert literally just seems to be there to try and get lesbians in the army.
But as graduation approached, I began feeling like I'd been handed so much in life. A sorority girl stereotype. Sure, I'd spent my life around inspiring women, but what had I really achieved on my own?
If actual woke people thought like this, we'd have such a better time in life. Because obviously she joined the army after thinking, who can I inspire? Which is fair enough, that's a good way to go, I think. But the build-up of this story has just been awful. This is going to inspire no people who go on equality marches and things like that, because obviously they all now think defund the police, and that America and obviously its army is institutionally racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever. I don't think this is going to convince any of them, and I don't think you want to convince them, because they will end up trying to put out more adverts like this. And this isn't even the worst one.
One of my sorority sisters was studying abroad in Italy. Another was climbing Mount Everest. I needed my own adventures.
I don't think studying abroad and, well, maybe climbing Mount Everest is entirely inspiring things. Don't get me wrong, climbing Mount Everest is absolutely an achievement. But if one of your examples of being inspiring is studying abroad, you need to widen the idea of what is inspiring. And I do include your lesbian mums in that. Having a gay marriage these days is just normal and shouldn't be seen as inspiring. However, getting paralysed after an accident and then managing to walk again, yeah, I can see that being pretty inspiring. Just these examples of inspiration are all over the bloody place. Anyway.
My own challenge. And after meeting with an army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength, and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way.
Oh my god, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. All you have done with this recruitment video is prove stereotypes. You were a walking, talking stereotype throughout it. Women have been in the army for literally decades. You are not shattering any stereotypes by doing this. And if people genuinely think they are too dumb to join the army. Oh god, that one was painful. But I do want to point out at this point, before we actually get to the last video, as you can see, the first two, which I would describe as the best adverts, there was something in common with them. And then, you know, the third one, that wasn't too bad, but, you know, getting iffy. This one was awful. And if you can see what the pattern is here yet, I wouldn't be surprised. Whether you think that's a coincidence or not, that's up to you to decide. But we will move on to the final video. And the most woke.
La da 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 da. La da 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 da. My singing voice took me all over the world. But no matter how far I traveled, how many things I experienced, I kept returning to a feeling inside.
Already this one's really arty-farty and I have absolutely no idea what's going on. All I know is that Janine was a singer, probably on a cruise ship. Great, where the hell is this going then?
I grew up in an army family. My dad, uncles, and both of my grandfathers served. So as soon as I turned 17, I asked for my dad's blessing to enlist. But having served in the Army during the Vietnam era, responding to civil unrest, he said no.
In this one's defence, she could have blamed her dad's sexism. Luckily he was in the Vietnam War, which was a bit of a mess on the US's side, so it appears that he didn't want her to join. For that reason, which is fine. But I don't know what's going on here. It's just, she's a singer, I know. Oh, she's an army family. Okay, cool. What is going on?
He had his reasons. So I turned to singing. First on the Strip in Vegas. Then, after a performance at the Apollo Theater in New York, I was invited to sing for a top cruise line, where I spent 5 years traveling everywhere.
I mean, again, cool story, but this is just getting really cringe. Because I have absolutely no idea where this story's going. All I'm being told constantly is that she can sing.
Over 70 different countries, witnessing the good and also the bad in the world. Places torn apart by political unrest, people suffering. Our ship was once turned away after a port had been bombed.
Cool, I can see why you'd want to join the army after all that. Don't know where this is going, though.
When I was 17, I had such real big dreams. I said, Dad, I wanna be a soldier, so I can be like you.
What the fuck is going on? Why is she singing? Just tell us the story. I don't need to hear a woman who happened to sing on cruise liners singing. It's just really weird. There's no story here. This has literally been summed up in a sentence. Woman sings.
And though the years have passed now, feeling just seems to last now.
I'm going to have to break this up even though there's not much to comment on. I just don't want her singing to be the end of this video. But there's nothing to say because she's not saying anything. Literally all this is black woman sings. Dad didn't let her in the army because army bad. Well, I don't know why I thought this one was the most woke. It's the most cringe by far, so I'm just going to keep it in the order it's in. But my god, this is bad.
It's not too hard to grasp now. Hey, Dad, I gotta be like you. Dad came around, and now I've turned my desire to serve into an army career and 2 master's degrees. And I still find time to perform for my fellow soldiers.
Good for you. What an absolute cringe and awful story. I don't know anyone that's going to be inspired to join the army because of that. Ironically enough, I still think this is the worst recruitment ad out of all these, because this one said literally nothing. At least with the uber woke one before, with Emma, it was like, oh, she wants to inspire people, so she joined the army. This one was literally just, oh, I was from an army family, I sing, couldn't join the army, then I could. That is the most boring and cringe thing I have heard. In terms of wokeness, it was actually a lot less than I remembered the first time I watched it, but as I say, I'm going to keep it in the order because partly I can't be bothered editing again, and partly because I'd rather keep the cringe till last. But I suppose overall when it comes to this calling campaign, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. But to have that story of Emma in where her whole thing was lesbian parents, women everywhere, smash the patriarchy, things like that, that was by far the wokest, and I can see the army pursuing more recruitment videos like that, despite the fact that David and Ricky's recruitment videos were by far the best. Jennifer's, I guess, was okay, but I think her story needs to be a bit more on topic. But that was all the videos that we had to go through from the calling. If there are any more, I will be sure to cover them, because, my god, half of them were cringe. And I think the cancer of wokeness is only going to spread in army recruitment videos from now on. But hey, I hope you enjoyed the Disney song at the end. But that's everything I had for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.